definition, an entity consisting of inhomogeneous units. Does that apply to the concept? If you said ice is a good, that means that all ice is a good. Any specific unit of ice, though, can be a different good from any other specific unit of ice.
May or may not be.
May or may not. Yeah.
But it requires somebody desiring that unit before you can even determine that. It's only when it's in an unused or undesired state that they are in fact the same.
Right.
But once somebody wants it, then they are different.
Value
Can be different.
Exactly. Yeah.
So values come into it.
Right.
And judgment of the person.
Right.
Utility is
Who's
part of
saying
the
it's
characteristic of the good.
Yeah.
Usefulness in a general sense.
It's not, well, in a very wide sense, usefulness. Like utility, in whichever way you want to take it, is part of the characteristic of a good. So it's not just the physical appearance.
Yeah.
So water, for example, is essential for
Cold
life.
water or warm, lukewarm water is not the same good.
Let's take another example, just if I can clarify this. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's say you need, I don't know, let's say you need, usually, we haven't gotten the law of diminishing marginal utility yet, but it's coming, we're teetering on it. Usually, if you have a supply of something, you get one more unit, you value it less than the previous unit. So if you have 4 eggs, you value the 5th egg less than the 4th and the other 4. However, supposing you need 5 eggs to bake a cake. You can't bake a cake without 4 eggs. I don't know anything about cake baking. It's on a shaky ground here. But anyway, if you get the 5th egg, you can make a cake. So the 5th, you can then value the 5th egg more than the previous 4 eggs and pay more for it because, by God, you're not going to get a cake. The 5th egg will now bring you a more serviceable. 5th egg is high utility and is more serviceable to you than the other 4 eggs. See what I mean? So that, each egg is the same physically. The 5th egg can bring you a whole new thing, so you'll value it more highly. I don't know if that clarifies it. Yeah,
you know that something is a good if it consists of homogeneous units. How do you know it consists of homogeneous units? What's the criterion?
Well, the criterion.
It seems to me that the ice cream and the ambience and the whatnot do not constitute an entity that consists of homogeneous units.
Well, it does, but it varies. I mean,
2 ice cream cones in that restaurant.
I mean, some person who might not doesn't care about the ambiance obviously won't go to Lieutenant's. He's not going to buy ice cream.
Yeah, that's not my comment.
Yeah.
I understand what it means to say that this carton of milk, the milk in this carton, consists of homogeneous units. Each molecule of milk is exactly like each other. But what are the units in the ice cream, in this ice cream parlor, and the ambience and whatnot, which are like each other? I mean, it doesn't look as though ice cream is like ambience.
2 ice cream cones,
It's literally ice cream in Lieutenant's or ice cream in Swenson's. Ice cream dash in Swenson.
I understand the question, and the point is that you've got inhomogeneous units.
Yeah.
She's saying only one unit, and there's more than one unit in this.
Yeah.
There's not only the ambience, there's not only the ice cream, there's also the thickness of the carpet, the number of waiters.
When your second,
this sort of stuff.
your second portion of ice cream would be enough.
So is it good in multiple of goods sometimes? So one good could be several individual goods as well.
Isn't it an entirely subjective thing?
Yeah.
What homogeneous is?
So what's the criteria?
Essentially, what the criteria is if the people involved in whatever transaction is involved with the goods, if the people believe that they're homogeneous, then they're homogeneous for that transaction. But somebody else observing it from outside may say that they either are homogeneous and the people involved in the transaction don't see it that way, or conversely, they might say those are not homogeneous, but the person involved. It's the people involved in the transaction, their view of the transaction that's important, their view of whether the goods are homogeneous or not what any external observer sees. And what you're trying to, what seems to be going on here is people are trying to use this definition as an objective definition, get an objective definition of things out of it. Whether homogeneity in this sense is entirely a subjective thing from the people involved in the transaction.
But people never think in terms of this is a good with homogeneous units.
Sure. Well, look, let's say you buy a portion of ice cream at Swenson's or whatever it is, okay? You're now confronted with the question, should I buy a second portion? Well, the second, it's the same unit, okay? Now, however, you presumably value the second portion less than the first portion, so heck with it, full or whatever, some of it. Whatever the reason. So you have homogeneous units to that person.
So it's two, when you compare two goods, it's then that you say they consist of homogeneous units. I thought, looking at one good, I thought this was an analysis of one good, This good consists of homogeneous units.
Right.
Is that the Austrian definition of the word good, or?
Yeah.
It's comparative, isn't it? You're comparing values, whether they're homogeneous.
Yeah,
It's not. You don't describe one good as.
Consisting. Well, that's what the
you point at Swenson's and say that ice cream parlor and everything is one homogeneous or one.
Ice cream at Swenson's would be a unit. Okay, you have one portion, second portion, third portion. How many of them should you buy? So you're confronted with this. Presumably, at the third portion, let's say you figure the heck with it. You come to a point where you don't buy it.
The important point is just to know what you mean by the word goods when you're speaking, and the fact that it's different than in other economic systems. That we know what you're meaning when you say the word good, and we understand that it's different than it is under other systems.
Well, let's see. Let's give another angle here. There's the famous Coase theorem now, which is very big in so-called public choice economics among alleged free market economists. And the theorem is, well, parts of it is that if here's the actual example of Coase. It's a famous article written about 15 years ago. A railroad is chugging along, and a locomotive is pouring out smoke. Okay? Smoke is lighting the orchards around it, the farms. Then the question is, these are costs, in other words, which the railroad is imposing on the farms. And according to the Coase people, the Coaseans, public choice people, it's important for somebody to pay the costs. In other words, this is so-called externality or external cost. The railroad is imposing on the farmers. And they view it that it doesn't matter whether the railroad has to pay the farmers or the farmers have to pay the railroad to stop it. In other words, they don't care whether the farmer has property right to being injured, or the railroad has property rights in the smoke, and the farmers have to pay them off to stop the smoke. Now that's of course because they don't have any theory of property rights. But the part I want to focus on now is their view is, okay, let's say the railroad is supposed to compensate the farmer. The railroad then compensates at market price. So you have an orchard which is destroyed by the smoke. If the market price is $10,000, the railroad pays off $10,000. That's it. That takes care of it. The Austrian view, however, is that the value to the farmer might not be the $10,000. It might be higher. Let's say he might love that orchard. The orchard came down from his grandmother. The value to him, therefore, is a lot more. If they really compensate him, the railroad has to pay a whole lot more.
It's like expropriating a little old lady's house.
Exactly.
There's just no way to evaluate it.
Exactly.
Really.
And the thing is, and the interesting thing here is, so the Austrian position is that you can't evaluate just on market price because the valuations are different. Each individual has a different value. And the interesting thing is you can't know what the value is. You see, because the little old lady can say, "Listen, I love this house so much, I need $1 million." There's no way to. She might be a liar. There's no way to say she's a liar.
It could be priceless.
Right. Exactly.
There's no reason I can't.
Right.
So no money.
Right. This is not a voluntary market transaction. There's no way to figure out what this person is.
The only way would be somehow go back in time, make her offers for the house in a free market situation, and say what she would find and what she would take.
Precisely. But this whole theory of so-called welfare economics, where the government messes people up, confiscates the land and whatever, and then compensates them on the basis of what they think is the proper compensation. And the proper compensation is this so-called objective basis. Okay, the value was $20,000, we'll pay you $20,000. You can't do that if you don't know what the person's value was, the subjective value of this thing.
Yeah. What about in the issue of property damage? You have one party suing the other. What stand does Austrian economics take? If my neighbor's dog has been ruining my garbage all over my property, or has been biting my children. Obviously, my children are priceless, but of course, I recognize that there's no market rate for children, not at least yet. Maybe in Arabia.
We're working on it.
I think the NDP will figure out a way. But what I'm wondering is that at least in some cases where things that are tradable on the market, how do you figure that people are going to be reasonable on a settlement like that?
I don't think there's any scientific way to do that. That's the point. There's no. The judge or arbitrator or whatever you want to call it can make some kind of estimate, talking to both parties, whatever you want to do it. But there's no scientific, in a sense, of precisely accurate way of saying this is worth 50,000 to you or something. It's just something, just do it the best way you can. Right? I don't see any. There's no. In other words, that. So even though the judge or arbitrator might do that, that doesn't mean that the person's value scale.
Yeah. That's getting off into another area.
Yeah, it's going off in legal theory.
Actually, it's just about time to take a break. Do you want to take that one more question?
Yeah, well, just one more point. Footnote on this thing. See, what we're doing here, we're talking about, there's a science of economics, there's a discipline of the theory, and then there's the art, which is applying it. And scientifically, we could say to define a good like this, we can talk about one-dimensional utility, all this other stuff. Applying it is an art, in the sense that the person who wants to apply it is an historian of the past, or a forecaster of the future, or an economist analyzing the current situation. You've got to just say, well, I think this is a good, right? In other words, I think the ice cream is a good, except for the case of Swenson's or whatever. And you sort of make these judgments, but they can be fallible because there's no way to precisely say that it's a good if you're applying it to the real world. So the art of economics requires judgment, entrepreneurship in a sense. It's not the same sort of precise science as the theoretical structure.
So a good, by definition, is what is available for sale. As soon as somebody wants to make a transaction, it can be something entirely different than what was originally offered.
I wouldn't say entirely different. It just depends on what you're buying in this thing.
I'm going to talk to you at 3 o'clock. I can get this straight.
One more question.
This is just a second. You were saying that the difference between when the government thinks your property's worth and when the government thinks your property's worth. Well, Robert Heinlein, one of the stories, he had to put a property tax, and the guy suggested that it's a percentage of the value of the property. The guy suggested that the owner of the property pays their own property for the tax. But there's a gimmick built into it. The gimmick is that anytime the government can buy the property for that price anytime, rather than take the tax.
Yeah, that's monstrous. That's not just Heinlein. That was.
That's where I heard. I haven't heard anywhere else.
Yeah, Gordon Tullock, two distinguished public choice theorists, alleged free market people. Professor Gordon Tullock, and now at George Mason and Armin Alchian at UCLA, came up independently with the same nonsense. They consider this the ideal tax.
You think that's nonsense?
Well, it's it's.
I like it because it uses negative feedback, and so it stabilizes itself.
Huh?
Okay, it uses negative feedback, so it stabilizes itself. The guy tries to cheat the government by putting too much.
Yeah.
Cheat.
Stable evil is still evil.
Look, let me just give you an anecdote about this. Okay. So Tullock and Alchian came independently, and it was a Montpellier Society meeting, which is a group of relatively free market economists now. I mean, it's very watered down. Everybody to the right of Trudeau can be in it. So, at any rate, Alchian and Tullock came up with this theory. So this is the perfect tax. This is the voluntary tax. This is the ideal tax. Where you get everybody to assess your property, and then you pay whatever tax is on it. And if you assess your property at $20, you pay a very low tax. But then the government, you have to sell it to the government for the next person who comes along at that price. If you don't want to sell something that's really priceless to you, you have to set $2 billion on it, and then you have to pay 10%, 2%, whatever, $2 billion. So poor Professor Hayek is now the dean of the oldest living Austrian economist. But in that case, I have this precious library. I love this library. I got 10,000 books or whatever. And that means in order to save my library, I have to value it $2 million. I wouldn't have to go to the poorhouse. And the answer was, who cares about your library? The That was the great so-called free market answer given by your blankety blank library. So that's the difference between a property rights approach and a, whatever Friedmanite public choice approach. We're looking at technicians trying to maximize government revenue or maximize something.
Which is exactly what Heinlein's trying to do in this example. Maximize government revenue.
Right. Okay, break?
Yeah, we're going to take a break. 10 minutes and back, we'll be back. And anybody...
Well, I think we should press on.
Yes.
One thing, I just want to, talking Mary with the break, that which might clarify this good question, homogeneity question, is again from the point of view of the actor, the consumer or whatever. So that Mary was asking me, well, what if you have 20 ice cream cones which are all the same? Aren't they really different in the sense that one is in a different, occupying a slightly different space, and to the left of the other one? But to the point of view of the consumer, it doesn't really care. In other words, for him, it's homogeneous. He doesn't care which strawberry ice cream cone he gets at Edix or whatever the store is. So again, it's from the whole thing's from the point of view of the actor, the actual person doing all this stuff. It's not from the point of view of molecular physics or objective properties of the object of the entity. I hope that clears up a little bit.
Well, I'm still saying you have to look at it as an approximation, because there's no way physically different things can ever be the same and evaluated the same. Even if the same waitress comes along and hands him a second ice cream cone and so on, it's at a different time. It's a different ice cream cone. He's going to feel different.
But he might feel
different at that time.
Not necessarily. He might feel exactly the same. But to apply it and to apply it to the empirical situation as an applied economist, so to speak, then you have to make a judgment.
I agree. You approximate. You say, well, we won't go beneath this level where...
We don't have to, because the acting itself doesn't. What you're trying to
What I got worked out in between after talking to you is, if I'm sitting at home and I say, I want an ice cream cone, at that point in time, all ice cream cones are the same. They are all homogeneous units. But I want to walk to get it. So now, all the ice cream cones that are within walking distance are homogeneous units. I decide to go north, now it's all those within walking, and so on. And the closer you get to making the exact purchase, the fewer homogeneous units there are in the good, until you make that final choice. And now it is not just any one, it's the one you bought.
Perhaps we should get to the purpose of why we look at goods that way.
Yeah.
And that is that it's a good way to refute government interventionist type of economists who would say that it should cost the same amount of money, in the name of fairness, to mail a letter from Toronto to London as it does to mail a letter from Hamilton to the same rate.
Right.
Because they are applying externally a value to it, and it's not the actor that's making the decisions.
Right. Well, that's one of the purposes. I don't think it's the only purpose. The first purpose is to get a true body of knowledge, so to speak, to build up an analysis of the economic system. It then turns out, however, that it has political applications, all this stuff. So it's sort of a dual purpose. At any rate, to press on, given the homogeneous units, let's say von Bauwerk, one of the great masters of Austrian economics, I should really mention who they are. To begin with, Karl Menger, our beloved founder, who taught economics at the University of Vienna, and therefore, it's called the Austrian School, wrote his book in 1871, called the Principles of Political Economy. I've just different translations, Foundation of Economics, whatever. So this is he's a great founder of the science. I recommend the book. Principles of Economics is that called. I certainly recommend the book. It's a great book. Marvelous book. It's the foundation of the whole thing. His great student and disciple, Eugen von Bauwerk, also succeeded him at the University of Vienna, or continued also taught at the University of Vienna, and wrote his great masterpiece, Capital and Interest, which goes into price theory as well, and also utility and price theory, and also discovered the laws of capital and interest, and wrote from 1880s to about 1914. So the different editions of the book, so it's around that period. So Baumgart's famous example is horses. Have units of homogeneous horses, what you do with them. I like to use logs, it doesn't really make much difference. So you get you have Crusoe here, who's he has a set of logs. You can say a set of logs. I'm trying to get homogeneous units here from this point of view. There's a certain group of logs. Okay, I call it the log, just to make it up. And he can use it for. We're assuming here he can use it for many different uses. He can take the same unit of stuff and use it for different uses. He has a priority of uses. Okay? Most important, let's say, is cooking tonight's fire. We can have meat, which is not raw. Okay, cooking fire. Tonight's fire. So this is his top priority. Second rank, if he has another set of logs, is I would say adding an extension to his log cabin or building his log cabin, whatever. Third rank might be storing logs for tomorrow night's fire. He doesn't have to schlep around and take an axe and chop wood tomorrow. So take a rest on that. Okay, so you have a little bit of savings here, and cooking tomorrow's fire. And I don't know, you can add different stuff. There's let's say building a fence around this thing so you can keep the wolves out or whatever. Okay, so building a fence. Of course, different Crusoes might have different order of priorities here already. And fifth, something that you always wanted to do, which we'll get to eventually, is building a boardwalk so he doesn't have to have his toes full of sand out on the beach. Obviously frivolous, but more affluent.
How about building a raft to get back to the world?
Building a raft. Yeah, right. So he ranks them, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the way, an enormous amount of trouble, enormous amount of headaches, incorporating economics, by people claim you can measure this. You would have solved a lot of set A, B, C in lexicographical order. At any rate, this is strictly ordinal. It's ranking them in priority. And so now the point is this: if he loses one, let's say he has these 5 separate logs, they're all there, he's ready. He's going to do this first and second, etc. One washes away. A tidal wave comes and washes away one of the sets of logs. Which use is he going to give up? He's obviously going to give up his lowest ranking use. He's not going to give this up. He has only 4 instead of 5 that he originally had. He's going to give up the boardwalk. Well, he'll wait until he gets another set in a couple of weeks or something. So he gives up then. If he has 5 sets of logs, he'll give up. His supply is 5. Supply being defined as your stock, the amount available of homogeneous units. But good. His supply is 5, and so he gives up. If he loses one of these logs, he doesn't give up. At least he gives up the least important use to him, which is 5th. So, on the other hand, he's got only 2 sets of logs and one washes away or loses it. He's going to give up the second highest value and keep the first one. So we conclude from this that the more logs he's got, the lower the rank of value to him of any one set of logs. Right? In other words, if he's got 10 logs, he only has to give up the 10th usage, right? Who knows what it is? It's building a little birdhouse or something like that. So he deduced from that the famous law of diminishing marginal utility, which was discovered in different ways by Menger and Walras and Jevons, third neglected figure, and about the same period, which is that law of diminishing marginal utility. Which says that the greater the supply of a good, supply being defined as the amount he has available, the greater the supply of a good, the lower the value of each unit. And of course, conversely, The lower the supply of the good, the greater the value of each unit, just the other side of the coin. And it's called the law of diminishing marginal utility, where value is called utility, and the word marginal comes in as reference to a unit. I'll go into that a little bit as to why this comes in. But anyway, marginal means at the margin. You're considering the next group of laws and what to do with it. You're considering the next portion of ice cream, whether to buy it or not. So people act in the real world in terms of units. So it's then called the law of diminishing marginal utility. One of the important reasons for this is this. Before Adam Smith was supposed to be the founder of economics, it really wasn't. That's a whole other shtick. And I'm so sure you've all heard the name, but anyway, Adam Smith wrote his famous Wealth of Nations in 1776, Scotsman, and for various reasons, which we still don't really completely sure about, but you can guess at, Smith, instead of founding economics, rolled economics back. In other words, economics took a big step backward after the Wealth of Nations. Various French economists, for example, and medieval scholastic economists on the continent had already discovered almost this law of diminishing marginal utility. They hadn't gotten to the margin part. They got everything else pretty well set, namely that the greater the supply of a good, the less the value would be. They didn't get in terms of units so much, but that's really just the last cornerstone, the last stone in the edifice. So before Smith, the general was figured that the value of a good on the market, the price of a good on the market is determined by the utility and the supply. How much is available, and how much people will evaluate the supply, and that if you have greater supply, it will be valued less. Okay. Smith's teachers, Scotland, Francis Hutcheson, also had the same view, and Smith himself, in his previous writings, 20 years before that, unpublished lectures, also had it. I guess the Wealth of Nations takes like 200 years backward. And he says, we can't figure out, the famous diamond and bread paradox, or diamond and water paradox. This is the so-called paradox of value, invented by Smith. And like most paradoxes, it's a false problem. The paradox of value is this. Look, he says, we have bread. Bread is a staff of life. It's extremely useful. It's, people die without it. It's tremendously useful. It's philosophically magnificent. And yet, you look at the market, it's very cheap. 20 cents a loaf, or whatever it was in those days. And the other thing, so you have bread which has a high use value. Let's see, okay. Bread, high use value. And then you have diamonds. Diamonds are frippery. You have to realize this is very important, by the way, and why this occurred. Smith was a devout Calvinist Presbyterian, tended to be against consumption anyway. Diamonds are frippery. Yeah, it's sinful. Okay, and here's sinful diamonds which he said has no use whatsoever. He actually says that diamonds have zero use value, almost zero. And yet diamonds are very expensive. They're valued very highly in the market. One diamond costs $10,000. This is a paradox. How come bread high use value, low exchange value? Meaning the price on the market, how much will exchange for? And yet, diamonds have zero use value, almost zero use value, negligible use value, and have a very high exchange value. He said he couldn't solve this, and therefore he just drops out. He says this is it, and his analysis of consumption and consumers drop out. In classical economics, between Smith, Ricardo, and Mill in Great Britain, they don't talk about consumers, but they can't figure it out. It's a paradox. It's a peculiarity of the market. It's a strange anomaly or whatever. So this, of course, leaves total hostage open to socialists or leftists later on. We'll see. Veblen, in many ways, is more aggravating than Marx even. Forstein Veblen said, look, coins the idea that there's two kinds of production. There's production for use and production for profit. There's production for profit. You can go for exchange value, for market values. As production for use, where you're really producing what people really use and need. So this sets out the dichotomy between use and market or exchange value, which is extremely pernicious politically in history of social thought. Okay, what was the resolution of the paradox, which predecessors of Smith himself essentially arrived at? Basically, is this: in the real world, this is again the Austrian approach, which looks at the individual, the acting individual, how he or she chooses. Namely, we don't choose classes of goods. We don't sit around as philosophers and say, which is more important to mankind, bread or diamonds? And then let us choose between them, and bread is better. That's not the sort of choices we're confronted with on the market. If indeed the angel Gabriel came down, this is one of my angel Gabriel examples. If the angel Gabriel came down and said, Earthlings, gather all the Earthlings together for TV or something, and said, Earthlings, you're now presented with a choice. I now present you with this choice. From now on, you have to give up either all the bread in the world now and forever, or also all the diamonds in the world now and forever. And probably most of them would say, let's give up diamonds. Oh, well, bread is more useful in this philosophic or sense of a whole class of products. But we're not confronted with that kind of a choice. The choice we're confronted with in the market is, how much should we pay for a loaf of bread? How much should we pay for a diamond? And so, in the market, in other words, we make marginal choices of units, which is where the marginal unit thing comes in. And so, what happens is that, okay, again, the law of diminishing marginal utility, it so happens in the world that there's a lot of bread around, okay? There's millions of loaves of bread, Wonder Bread, Silver Cup, Pumperidge Farm, etc. There's a Rye, Pumpernickel, etc. Okay, so we have a diagram, a simple diagram. Look at this. We have marginal utility or whatever, value, okay, and quantity in the x-axis. And we have we might start off, you have only one loaf of bread and I might not have much. Some might be enormous, or actually it might be enormous. Still in all, you wind up, the quantity is so big that you wind up with a fairly low exchange value of any given loaf. You have an enormous supply, 10 million loaves, whatever it is, of bread. Therefore, for each person, the value of each loaf is fairly small. On the other hand, diamonds might be, if you had only one diamond in the world versus one piece of bread, and loaf of bread, we might choose a loaf of bread. But there's so few diamonds around, very scarce, that you something like that. So we're up here, and so that 1 carat of diamonds is, of course, worth a lot more, the higher value in the market than one loaf of bread. So the relative scarcity of the two things becomes the key to the whole situation. Once you look at the acting individuals, say, on the market, rather than consider things as a philosophic, holistic philosophic class, then you can solve the paradox. And the mystery of why Smith himself has sort of seen the light of 20 years before comes up with this. I think part of it, I don't know, but part of it is this Presbyterian outlook that somehow it's frippery and it should be somehow higher value, more useful. Okay, so this, we're looking at another way, another famous example is water. Water, I wouldn't say it's free, but it's more or less so low in value, so much of it, that you go to the fountain and get water. You don't have to pay for each glass, each cup. It's extremely abundant out here somewhere. However, if you're walking across the Libyan desert, and you have one canteen, 1 cup is enormously, extremely important. You pay $2 million, your whole life savings for 1 cup. You pay 0 or next to nothing for 1 cup here. So, because the amount available to you, is very extremely small and way up in your utility scale, the marginal utility scale. So the relative scarcity becomes the key thing here, and so the value on the market, which is the exchange value, which is the price, okay, the market becomes determined by 2 things, 2 forces at work here. One is the amount available at any given time, the supply, price on the y-axis now, and quantity of the good on the x-axis. And the supply of a good, conceptually, we don't know exactly what it is, it could be anything, but conceptually we could find out. 2 million loaves of Wonder Bread, 100,000 pounds of peaches, whatever. We have demand of the valuation determined by the law of diminishing marginal utility, so that looking at it, the greater the supply, the lower will be the valuation, and the lower will be the price. There's also a common sense way of looking at this thing, of course. If you don't want to look at the law of diminishing marginal utility and hang your arrive at it, at a higher price, less will be purchased. At a lower price, more will be purchased. It's saying a similar thing. Exactly what we're looking at. So this is the so-called demand curve. It's how much will be purchased at any given price either by one person or by in the aggregate by all people in the market, all consumers. You just sum up. If you have if there are 5 consumers thinking about whether to buy Wonder Bread, and conceptually they arrive at each individual's demand curve, how much they pay to buy at any given price. And some person might be a marginal Wonder Bread person, will only buy it if it gets down to 50 cents a loaf. Somebody else might be a fanatic, will buy it if it's up to $10 a loaf. And you wind up with sort of a so-called falling demand curve for any good. So these are the two forces which determine any price of any product, any good or service on the market. And these are the only two forces determined. Demand for it, how much will be purchased at any given point, and the supply of it, which is the amount available. Okay, now this gives us our famous demand and supply curves. Now, I haven't talked about Friday because it would probably take too long to go in my courses. I, of course, bring in Friday and talk about Crusoe and Friday exchange. That's important. I just leap a little bit here. Although we can say in this sense about exchange, I think it's important to say before we get to analyze price further, that the whole market is like a lattice work, okay, it's like a spider web or a lattice work of millions of different unit exchanges. So you have me buying a newspaper, let's say, and so I'm exchanging 30 cents in the New York Times or whatever. And in this case, where both parties benefit, there are two value scales involved here, actually. All right, there's me, and I rank 30 cents. I rank the New York Times higher than 30 cents. I put this in parentheses I haven't gotten yet. This is me just before I buy the paper. I'm looking at these things. I would be better off, psychically better off, of a higher utility, whatever you want to call it, if I spend the 30 cents on the New York Times, because I value the New York Times more highly than I value the 30 cents. On the other hand, the news dealer is precisely the opposite situation. He values the 30 cents, which he hasn't got yet, more highly than the New York Times. He's got plenty of New York Times. It's not his problem. He wants to get money for it. So we then have here an exchange. This is a unit exchange. Both parties are better off. Okay? As we complete the exchange, which is a transfer of ownership, like an exchange is, it's sort of like buying a house, except there you have a notarized deed and all that. You don't have to do that, thank goodness. You just give him the 30 cents, he gives you the Times. That's it. You don't have to have a lawyer and a fleet of accountants intervening in this. Okay, so I'm better off on a higher utility point, whatever you want to call it. I'm better off by getting the New York Times. I'm benefiting. He's benefiting by getting the 30 cents. We have a mutually beneficial exchange. Both parties to it go higher on their value scales. They both accomplish more of their goals. And so what we have here, the conditions for a successful exchange are two people. There are two people involved here, and two commodities, two goods. In this case, it's the two people, me and the news dealer, the two goods of 30 cents in the New York Times. And we exchange these two things, we're both better off. The free market is a lattice work, millions of these exchanges going on all the time. So if somebody works for IBM, let's say, you're selling your labor service to IBM, you're getting money. You prefer getting money to not selling labor service. They prefer getting labor service and getting than keeping the money. Okay, so in each set of cases, you have two people, or in the case of IBM, a group of people represented by a corporation, and making these exchanges. In each case, each person is better off. Each entity is better off. So we have a situation of the free market, even without the efficiency of the free market and all the rest of it. At each step of the way, each person is maximizing, getting better and better, higher utility at each step of the transaction. In case of Crusoe and Friday, each one is better off than exchange fish for meat or whatever the exchange is. So, and we already have here. So we need that we need that for successful exchange is a reverse inequality of values of the two people. What we need is for me who evaluate the two things differently than him. In other words, I have to, if both of us prefer 30 cents in the New York Times, there's no basis for a transaction. I have to prefer the New York Times for 30 cents. If I prefer 30, if I have the same relative value scale as he's got, we don't make any deal. So what you have to find for any exchange is a reverse inequality of values. Because values are subjective, they're ordinal, their value scales are part of each individual. Now again, once you state this, it might seem self-evident, but this already wipes out a huge amount of economics, history of economic thought. Okay? It's wiped off the books. Right? It's like all great discoveries or inventions, they're only self-evident after you look at them, after they're already been stated. Before that, it's not so self-evident. So what happens is that, for example, if you take Karl Marx's Das Kapital, very interesting book, you don't have to read more than the first 2 pages, because the prime fallacy of the thing is in the first couple of pages. I'm not saying you shouldn't read the rest of it. If you're a masochist, you can go ahead and do it. But the prime fallacy, which is true of most economic fallacies, most fallacies are in the assumptions in the first couple of pages. The rest is spinning out. So he starts off as follows. There's an exchange. He doesn't use newspaper, whatever. But he says 2 things exchange for each other. Let's say 30 cents for the New York Times, or 1 pound of bread for 2 dozen eggs, or whatever. And he says because they exchange for each other, he says they must be equal in value. Okay. So then he says, okay, what is there about fish and horses or whatever, to get back beyond money, let's say fish and horses, or eggs and butter, or whatever, eggs and horses, whatever. What is there in these 2 products if one is equal to the other, that make them equal? What is there to make them equal in value? And he looks and he says, well, it can't be weight. Weight is totally different. It can't be volume. Volume is totally different. And he winds up the quantity of labor hours embodied in the 2 products. That's, of course, also the second crazy solution. But the point is, the whole problem is posed incorrectly because they're not equal in value. It wouldn't be exchanged if they were equal in value. You know, basis for any exchange at all. If they're really equal, why bother going through the cost of finding the other guy and exchanging? It's like saying, if I have a nickel and you have a nickel, and they're numismatically the same thing. Let's say they're both the same data set. There's no point in me going around exchanging nickel for your nickel, unless some bizarre personal reason. Generally, there's no reason. Just a pain in the neck. It's a waste of. That's what is now called transaction costs. So no point to it. Okay. And so exchanges are, if 2 things were really equal, there wouldn't be exchange at all. It would be equal in value. So the exchange requires this double inequality. So we can toss out the whole thing. The rest of Marxism can be tossed out just on that basis alone. It's like the other labor, quantity of labor, and all the rest of the stuff that goes into it. So now a less extreme version, the classical economists, Smith and Ricardo, had a less extreme, well, they actually had some of that too. I mean, Marx, in many ways, Marx was a sort of consistent Ricardian, or Smithian, carrying this thing to its logical conclusion. One variant of Smith and Ricardo has the quantity of labor hours. They're looking for some way to, how do you embody this? What's the physical thing that embodies this value? Another less extreme variant, coming later on from Alfred Marshall, was cost of production. Cost of production must be the same quantity of labor pain. There's all sorts of ways of looking at this. They're all fallacious because they're not equal to begin with. Okay, so that's another example of how these things seemingly recognized, seemingly very simple, have important consequences. Okay, getting back to price determination. Supply and demand become the 2 determinants of price, and then this is not just Austrian, this is generally accepted, so I don't know if we have to go completely into this thing. But anyway, there's a variant here, which is Austrian. The market price, the day-to-day market price, which we call market equilibrium price, unfortunately, because there's another equilibrium which is unsound, so again, it gets very confusing. The day-to-day market price will tend to be very quickly the intersection point, supply curve and supply line demand curve. This will be what prices will be. The day-to-day market equilibrium. I don't know if I have to go into this, or you probably won't know this. Do you all know it? Raise your hands if you don't all know it. Those who don't know it already, raise their hands. Everybody knows it. Okay.
What are we supposed to know?
Well, why it is the market price will be the intersection price. I go very quickly on this. If the price is higher than this, if this is peaches, let's say, and peaches are 60 cents a pound, I don't know what peaches are, let's say 60 cents a pound. That's the equilibrium price. If the price is higher, then people will only buy much less than the 200,000 pounds available. They'll buy only 150,000 pounds. This will be an unsold surplus. If anything, a businessman hates buying something and not having it resold, or nobody buying it. Unsold surplus piles up. In order to eliminate the unsold surplus, this unwanted thing of these things piling up, which you're not selling, you cut your price. As you cut the price, more is purchased, and finally, lo and behold, you get down to the equilibrium price. There's no more unsold surplus. So the tendency on the market then is to wipe out very quickly unsold surpluses. All you need to do it is for businessmen to prefer to make money and not lose money. So-called profit motive, or profit and loss motive. To make money and not to lose it. Okay.